Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us, or good morning, depending upon where you are in the world. It's a pleasure to have you all here today. We're going to have today a little discussion about unlocking revenue strategies, particularly for magazine publishers, um, really around the content-driven world that we're in, and some of the challenges we've faced, some of the history of where we've been, and some of the opportunities on where we can get to. We've Great pleasure. We have the opportunity and the time spent with Angus Chisholm, who is from R Media in Sydney, Australia. And I'd love to introduce him today. He's a senior business analyst there at R Media, has been there for 7 years. It was previously it was Bauer, and then it was bought by MCI, who has now relabeled it as R Media. And Angus, thank you so much for sharing your early morning with us. We appreciate the
It's
opportunity.
good to be here.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit more about what you're doing at R Media?
Okay, I've been with R Media for almost 7 years, coming up to Easter. It's a very well established print publisher here in Australia, very well known, formerly called Australian Consolidated Press. And then it did a stint as Bauer Media Australia, and more recently R Media. We have 24 print titles across Australia and New Zealand, 17 online titles, and I have worked across every section here in our media, but settled upon the content systems simply because we're a content creator. So it was a no-brainer really to become a bit of an expert or to specialize in the content systems alone.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. I look forward to diving in a little bit more about those content systems out of the 17 out of the 24, and some of the opportunities that may be available to others, and gain some of your valuable insight and expertise on what appears to be really an expanding marketplace in Australia and New Zealand since the acquisition. So kudos to you and the team on that. And we also have joining us today is Debbie Gupta. Debbie is our Senior Vice President of Marketing and Channels here at Fidel. Debbie, you want to take 2 seconds to introduce yourself as well?
Absolutely. I'd like to take the first second to thank Angus as well for being our special guest today. It's been great to get to know you over the past few months. And it's also been great to work with media publishers, magazine publishers like yourself. So if I could take a minute, Dave, or like a few seconds, Dave, and maybe talk a little bit about Fidel. We actually have a significant history. It dates back at least 9 years or so within the publishing space, where we've been servicing really some of the largest publishers in the world. Two of the big five publishers, 3 of the largest French publishers, 6 of the top educational publishers, and it's been really exciting to work with all of these publishers from all the way from Australia, like Angus, all the way through to the United States, the UK, France, and so on. So really kind of servicing all of their global needs around the world. The portfolio that we've built up, I would say, is also quite expansive and robust across the different types of business processes that we've seen within those organizations, ranging from magazine publishers to the book publishers to the educational, trade publishers, where we've been servicing them typically all about content. It all comes down to content, everything ranging from helping those organizations manage the rights and royalties for the content that they're licensing into their organization and selling out, as well as an area called rights and permissioning, which is really at the ideation stage of creating that content, through to providing picture hubs where magazine publishers can license content into their organization. And then finally, our topic for today, content syndication portals and helping with strategies for monetizing that content. So thank you for indulging me in those few minutes on just kind of explaining a little bit about Fidel.
No, thank you, Debbie. It's great to understand the breadth, depth, and the level of expertise that Fidel does bring to the table, not just from a knowledge space and the fact that we've attracted a lot of those marquee clients across the globe, but also that we've acquired a lot of the expertise in there. In fact, some of our best people are people who came from industry. They were customers who wanted to work for Fidel because they wanted to make a change in the industry that they love so much. So it's great to hear all of the offerings and capabilities that we're bringing in. We'll explore some of the opportunities I think that some of those products can bring, although we won't dive particularly into real specifics on all of the product capabilities, but I know we'll kind of touch on some of the areas where we can add value for sure towards the end. And clearly we'll take questions and answers at the end of all of this. So as you go through today, listening to Angus and myself and others in conversation, we invite you to throw some questions and answers in to the comments area. And we look forward to addressing those as best as we possibly can with the time that we do have today. So thank you very much. So we've gotten through the introduction, the agenda, really talking about, content syndication, beyond revenue. What does it mean to be able to get to the point where you can actually do viable content syndication in a really leverage the business processes that you have and the content that you have in a very simple, intuitive, and easy way to do that to generate additional revenues. Really, the syndication model has changed drastically since the early 2000s. And we will talk a little bit, hopefully, about that as well, and where publishers can be enabled to do syndication on themselves versus necessarily having to rely on third parties to do that kind of content aggregation, segmentation, and distribution. Talk about, as you said here, proven strategies for success. Reuse of content is definitely part of that. Maybe a look behind the scenes. Angus is going to show us a little bit about what he's doing at our media around syndication and what they've been able to achieve in a reasonably rapid period of time. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, jump into questions and answers and some closing remarks. So I think with that, let's just dive in and really let's start talking about really the opportunities around syndication and how did that all start with you, Angus? I mean, you had systems before. You were obviously, as you said, there's 24 publications, 17 are online, predominantly focused on women's interests and issues, things that have an overlap to an extent, not just from that focus area, but also from a content perspective. So I'm sure that there would be overlaps, between outdoors and home life and cooking and adventure magazine, things like that kind of all come together. It's almost kind of, from a content perspective, farm to table, right? From a lot of what you do. And, how you can cross leverage that content. How was it previously done? How did you manage that process?
Okay, well, the baseline was very simple. We are a good syndicator worldwide, and we knew that, and there's a dollar figure attached to it. So that was the starting point, with two quite aged systems that were a little difficult to use, very slow, and not that easy to find content within. So if you take that as the baseline and you implement a new system where you make it easier to do content sales and make it easier for your agents worldwide to find exactly what they're looking for, then the logic flows that you should do more syndication, make more money. And that was the starting point of, well, it's time for these two existing systems to go. They're basically at end of life. If we put in a new one, the idea is we'll do better than we are doing already. And that was the starting point.
So you had this massive inventory of content, but gaining access to that repository of content in a way that was simple, intuitive, and effective from being able to be searched for content. Was that one of the challenges that slowed that process down, or those key areas of your focus?
Yeah, that definitely slowed the process down, but it was also I think the top three of the user stories that were gathered from the business. What do we want from a new system? Intuitive, easy to use, easy to find stuff. That just kept being thrown at me time and time
Yeah.
again. So with a system like Picture Desk, you're dealing with the 21st century system that has user experience at the very heart of how it was built, why it was created. Whereas, the others probably not so. Maybe they're a little bit created by IT people for the business rather than created by business people for the business. If you can see the difference there, sometimes
Yeah.
IT gets the idea in their head, oh, this is what the business needs, and goes ahead and implements it, but that's not exactly what they wanted.
Right. So it was IT or potentially systems that were designed around how can I provide uh, a certain set of requirements versus how do I provide a user experience. And they often, as you well know, and for those of us who have been in the software industry for many years and IT in general, know that those can be radically different as to how that gets presented back to the end users. While it still meets the criteria of the requirement, it's not one that, at the end of the day, is easy to use and overall intuitive in nature. Yeah. So, when did you embark on that user story definition and analysis for determining what kind of platform you were looking for?
That would have been a good 2 years ago. So the idea there, very typical of an IT business analyst, is you pick some representatives from each side of the business, from each component of the business that are using the existing systems. Just engage them in a conversation. What do you like about the current system? What do you not like about it? What do you wish it could do?
Mm.
And from all of that, you refine it down into a set of user stories. And in this case, I think there was something like 40 or 41. So quite heavy, a lot of user stories, quite a lot of requirements from the business on exactly what they really wanted. And then you simply go to market, see what is able to potentially deliver on all of those. I think we started with 4. One of them fell on their sword almost immediately by saying, "Oh, we're not doing any further development on our digital asset management system." So 4 became 3. And then as you get further down the process and start involving the business, okay, well, we've got some test systems here for you to look at. The user stories can be turned into user test cases, and they can have a real hands-on experience with it. Picture Desk rose to the top very quickly, and it's all around ease of use and great user experience, and really it's quite quick too.
And speed and time is of the essence in publishing, right? At the end of the
In
day.
any business, that goes without saying.
Yeah. Great little nuggets there. I find it very interesting that, you started with really polling the users and saying what's not working for you. And if you had a whiteboard and you wanted to fill it with a solution, what would that solution comprise of? And you came up with 41 stories over a period of how long did it take for you to get through that process?
That would have been a good 3 months.
Okay.
Trying to tie down some of these people when they're on, say, a weekly print cycle for one of the weekly magazines was very, very difficult.
Yeah.
But it can be done. Just you work outside the box, work outside the hours, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden you've
So
got your requirements all set.
I was going to say it's your kind of working group becomes a night job collaborative, right? Fitting in between all of the time pressures and the constraints that they have during normal business. Yeah.
And also encouraging the business people to not be afraid to ask for something that they think is completely outrageous. I would tell them, unless you ask for the sun, the moon, and the stars, you won't get them. And if
Yeah.
you do
Right.
ask for them, maybe you will. So
Right.
never think in the negative that you simply are asking for something that is unattainable.
Yeah, and when you took that, I find that very interesting because that's been incredibly successful in other places where I've worked as well, which is telling people not to feel constrained by what they know they have today, but but what they could use tomorrow to make them more successful. And sometimes that's a bit of a shock to the system, depending upon the types of companies that people work at, because that's never been offered to them before. How well was that received by your users?
That was always the point where the eyes light up and they think, well, you know what would be really good if it could do
Yeah.
X, Y, Z, and hence more user stories. That's probably why this project was so heavyweight with user stories than a normal project would of that size and that caliber.
Yeah. But that type of approach that you took, which was, nothing is off the table, eyes wide open, imagine if you can, what would it be? So you always get the outliers to all of that, but therein lies the creativity, right? Which is great. But what you wind up with as an outcome, which I'm sure you'd validate, is users who are incredibly happy with the system that they wind up getting, because they haven't taken anything off the table, because they didn't feel confined or restricted to the norms at the time. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And getting the people to be exposed to it very early on, hands-on, real experience with the system, that helps to integrate it into the company later on when you've signed on the bottom line and it's time to go live.
Yeah. And that's an interesting from a process and a change management perspective, right? Very interesting. So when did users, just from a timeline perspective, start looking at platforms such as PictureDesk, which is an offering that we have here at Fidel, and you looked at others as you started taking a look at that dream list, that wish list, or this is actually what we need to be successful list, however you want to frame that. When did you start looking at actual platforms with the users? And I'm sure it was probably in a much smaller kind of committee or test group who then brought things to the larger.
Yeah. It wasn't until we had whittled the numbers down to just 2, because there is always the danger if you expose representatives from the business to too many systems that, well, we've tested A, B, and C, so I can't quite remember which one did what. When it becomes a simple A/B test, it's like, well, there's this one, there's that one. Which did you prefer?
Right.
And that was all handwritten, by the way. It wasn't captured anywhere on Excel spreadsheets or anything, because I wanted it to be a visceral experience for them. So they had their question and answer sheets. They sat in front of the system, did their tests, and wrote their comments, and then they were collated. We got back together and thought and assessed it. Which is making our people happier, which will help them create content, syndicate content, and what will make their lives easier.
Yeah. So very interesting approach, right? Because a lot of people will take a very pragmatic or analytic approach, which is, here's the feature, here's the function, here's the feature, how did it do? Give me a ranking, 1 through 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, whatever it is. And then people get constrained by the feature function analysis that they're doing versus approaching it from a holistic, how well did I like the system and did it enable me to do what it was that I wanted it to do, right? Which is, it tends to be a touch subjective, but at the same time, with the lens that you all put on it from a user story perspective, you could still remain objective with the feedback that was given from the users. Yeah.
For sure, we had to. We could not be seen to be IT imposing a system upon the business. That's not what IT does in the 21st century.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. So from about 2 or 3 months in the user group, and then taking a look, maybe at the same time in parallel, you were looking at what are the types of platforms that are available, whittling them down to 2. How long did that take? Did you do it while you were dealing with the users, or did you do it after you had gotten a majority of the feedback from the users on their wish list?
On their wish list, we I was really in parallel. That there was very much a crossover there between the two phases of that.
Okay.
So in the end, I suppose it was a seamless transition from coming down from the 4 that we started off initially, then went to 3, and then the 2 that we ended up with. We were speaking about those as if they were really the only front runners, because they were with the
Mhm.
business from that time, so that they got used to it. They knew how to refer to one, they knew how to refer to the other. And
Gotcha.
it builds a little bit of excitement too, that, we're getting the test systems ready. We're going to get you logons. You can have a look around yourselves.
Right, right. And so from the start, it was 3 months to get through the user group and gather that. In conjunction, you were also looking at platforms that kind of fit. By the time that you got from the start of your user group to the time when you started demonstrating products to the users, what was the time frame that was there?
That would have been about 8 months. You're asking me to think back a couple of years
Yeah,
here, but yeah,
yeah,
it
it's
took a while because
roughly, yeah.
yeah, it took a while because we wanted to get it right. We knew that the business wanted to get it right, and the the 2 existing systems, even though they were end of life, they weren't so decrepit that they were ready to fail. So they were still
Right.
performing their function. So there wasn't a lot of pressure, only from ourselves, to make sure that we did this in a timely manner and didn't
Mhm.
drag it out too long.
Yeah, sure. And then the final A/B test. Did you give yourself a 2, 3 weeks, or how did that boil down?
I think it was 3 weeks for the final
Yeah.
A/B
Okay.
test. Yeah.
All right. Fantastic. So you got your platform. You decided on Picture Desk by Fidel,
Mm.
and um, that has now been implemented in a reasonably short period of time. We can talk about implementation later on, but really, it was reasonably quick. It got you up and running. People were enamored with the capabilities, and it allowed you to start syndicating in
Mm.
a in what was the period of time where you could kind of cut over your syndication and start working on
That would
additional.
have been immediate. When we went live with the internal staff, we went live with our agents as well.
Hmm.
So the agents, of course, have their own logins, and I'm not sure you know much about the user profiles within the system, but you can be very specific with what an external party sees or does not see within your
Hmm.
system. So the agents that specialize in food, they would see the food channel. The agents that specialize in homes would see the homes channel. And then, of course, there's the pages channel, which we'll be talking about later, which is, the primary syndication way of
Gotcha.
syndicating not just images, but articles as well.
So it allowed your agents, or you did segmentation based on content type and media that you had.
Mm.
And that was able to expose that out to the agents to be able to get their job done more effectively and efficiently,
Yep.
and compress time cycles, or um, allow them to expose that content to people who wanted to potentially purchase or reuse it
Mm.
in a faster way. Let me ask you first of all, is what I just said, is all of that true? I don't
Yes,
want to
that
put
is
words.
correct.
Yeah.
That is
Okay.
exactly
All
how
right.
it's done. We have a head of syndication who, I'm sorry, couldn't be with us today. He's busy all week, but that is his primary goal.
Okay. So compressed time to market. How was it from a quality perspective? Did they find that they were able to get more content of greater quality out to people who were looking to purchase, uncover things that they didn't realize were there, or were there any of those types of benefits?
There would be, definitely. It would be up to the. It's a pity we couldn't get an agent of ours in on this call so you could see it from their point of view.
Yeah.
But that was really one of the initial goals. Let's make it easy for them to find
Mhm.
exactly what they want. Therefore, it's easier for them to distribute and sell more.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect
The,
sense. I have a
time will
feeling.
tell.
I have a feeling Debbie's taking notes, going, next webinar, agent discussion, how to make myself
Mm.
more effective, efficient, and drive revenue for my corporation.
Yeah, and the thing is, and you can see the result. There will be a bottom line result. Obviously, I can't talk about it, but let's just put it this way: we would not have embarked on this process if we didn't see that there would have been a good outcome for us.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Debbie, did you have something that you wanted to ask? Because you took yourself off mute.
Oh, you noticed that. So,
Hey, Debbie.
Hi there. So, I guess if I were to break it down, it sounds like the motivation for our media in terms of leveraging technology and kind of enhancing your you guys were already strong in content syndication. And so it sounds like some of the motivation you're speaking of is to further enhance or further boost the success that you were having. Are there, I guess, what are, for any of your peers that might be out there, what are some of the reasons that they should consider as to, why should they invest in content syndication and further invest in kind of strengthening their platforms, their business processes, really everything around that topic?
Because it's a good question, because I can answer it in two ways, really. Because there's intrinsic value in the content you create, not just when it's initially put online or sold in a magazine, but when it's repurposed, or either within the same geographic zone or outside of. So why have a piece of content that's just put out there once? It makes no sense in this day and age when it can be put out in multiple geographic zones at multiple points in time to reach an even greater audience. If you're a content creator, what do you want to do? You want your content to be read. So that is the way to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what you're what you're touching on makes me think of, so is it one or the other or both? Basically, you identify a piece of content, or you're creating this content. How can you get more out of it? Sounds like
get the maximum out of it.
How can you get the maximum? So is it two things? Is it sell it? Do you sell that content outward? So that's maximum in terms of revenue coming in, and then I guess reuse, right?
Yeah, well, we reuse internally as well. So we will create a piece of content for one of our weekly magazines here, but it can be reused in New Zealand. It's just far enough away to be a different market, but that's still within the same company. Puzzles, really great example. Our puzzle people are amazing. They can just pump out an amount of puzzles on a daily, weekly basis that is incredible. But that doesn't mean it's a one-off. They have a catalogue of them and they can reuse, and that's often done internally rather than externally. I couldn't tell if even if we syndicate puzzles externally. I really don't know, but it would be a shame if we didn't, because we're very good at that as well.
That's interesting. We actually have another customer that was telling me that they have, and let me know if this is similar to your organization. They have special interest publications, and I think those are ones that they only release. I think they had about 50 of those. They only release them once or twice a year. So it might be, for instance, something I'm familiar with right now, because I have a kid that's applying to the universities right now, or the colleges right now. So this other customer told me about a special interest publication dedicated to college season, which is, quite popular here in America. But and so what I understood from her was that they do a lot of repurposing of content to put together those special issues. So they're pumping out content, throughout the year, but then when they put together a special issue, it's almost like the best of, or really interesting stories from previous years. Is that something that that our media does as well? Are there certain?
Yes. You can see that in recipes, for example. A good recipe never goes away. It just gets reused over and over, and it can be repurposed. Let's look at one of my favorites, lasagna. It can be traditional, it can be vegan, it can be vegetarian. All of a sudden, that one recipe can be redone over and over and sold to special interest groups or just syndicated worldwide. It
Yeah,
crosses borders.
holiday cookbooks, recipes. Yeah, no, that
Oh, yeah.
makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's great. From a so that's kind of the reuse. Was there anything, I mean, clearly, content is king and reuse is queen, or maybe it's the other way around. I'm not sure, but it depends, I guess, what part of the business you're sitting in to determine which was king. But getting that reuse, did you discover that you had assets that you didn't know that you had, and raise the percentage of reuse with the new system? Or
I certainly did. Part of the exercise was ingesting an archive of 12 million assets. Now, what we did there with PictureDesk was we said, look, it's a very old style folder hierarchy. And if you can keep the original folder paths in somewhere in the comments fields for us, we have entire sections that know which folders to go to look at either a broader or a more narrow view of very old content. And because they did that and then hyperlinked it for us, I certainly discovered content whilst testing that feature. I think a system like PictureDesk can uncover for you if you're lucky enough to have an historical archive that may not have been particularly well used or particularly easy to find something within. All of a sudden, it becomes an open book with a proper index where you can just go, well, this is what I'm looking for. Great, here it is. Click.
Yeah, and you hit on something. You hit on something interesting there, which was, yes, we transitioned to a new system, but people had a way of navigating in their old system that was preserved so that they didn't lose the context of where something used to be, yet it was now available in the new system. So
Correct.
it didn't break their navigation or their point of perception as to where things were.
Correct. And that was never an original use case. It just wasn't thought of, but it became evident during the testing. So we put it to PictureDesk. Could you do this for us? And sure enough, they did.
There it was. Yeah, fantastic. So modern system with it being able to access content in the mindset of the way that it used to be. So I didn't have to fully change the way that I navigated through my head as to where things were. And you discovered content you had forgotten about from 12 years ago, which is great. So clearly that helps with the use case of reuse and bottom line revenue growth on syndication.
So it becomes a new process without actually being a new process. They're following a process they've always done, but the result is a lot easier to obtain.
That's wonderful. That's a great snippet. As far as the internal use of it of PictureDesk, I think it's pretty clear on how that's being used. And now your agents for capturing the information or finding the information, searching it, intuitive, easy, straightforward, performant, being able to compress cycles to be able to talk to others about how they may want to use the content and acquire that. So your agents, but you also started to go direct to consumer as well through a web portal.
We did, yeah. It was something that we could never really do properly before. It could be done, but it was a very difficult process to navigate. And to be able to have a front end that was readily accessible on the World Wide Web and offer people some of our iconic images for purchase for their own use it was a user story, and we're certainly glad we did it. That's something I'd love to show you toward the end of this. I believe I'm doing a demo. It's one of the more exciting features that we got excited about. And I'll give you a real life scenario. We did a house shoot here in Sydney, I think it was. beautiful place overlooking the harbour, you can just imagine. And the landscaping architect company who did the gardens contacted us, said, actually, we'd like just 3 of the shots from the magazine for our website, or any more if you have them. So we were able to direct them to the front end. This is what you're looking for, just put in these parameters. They were able to find what they wanted, download. I believe it's up on their website now.
Mm.
Easy. You could not have done that in any or either of the older systems.
Well, now you bring up a very interesting point with that, and I can't wait to see the demo myself, because it's one that I haven't seen before. But you were constrained in your ability to make that offering because of platform or technology, a
It was a
combination of
platform.
the technology. Yeah. So
Mm.
so what I mean, clearly we just talked about constraints that were removed using the new technology, but what kind of technology did you need to move from to get to where you are today?
It was completely internally focused. There was no window to the world
Hmm.
on our asset storage, and that therein was the problem. It was fine from a security point of view, it's fine, nobody can get to it, but from a revenue point of view, if you need to be able to take Joe public as a potential new revenue source, how do you market to the average person on the street who has a credit card that might want to buy something for their own use?
Yeah.
Now we can. We just couldn't back then.
Yeah.
Wasn't ever
Yeah.
thought of back in the days when the early 2 systems were implemented.
Interesting. So not only was it a new interaction model and user experience, but
Mm.
it was also a new technology platform that opened up the realms of possibilities to be able to expose content to a much broader and public audience
Mm.
for additional revenue. So you opened up a new channel from a revenue perspective.
Yes, and we can see from the download report that PictureDesk has a great reporting section within it. We can see exactly who's downloaded what.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. And you also have you have the ability to segment the content that you want to make available, and decide what
Yes.
will be or won't be in that catalog that's available, and you can rotate that at any time and expire it as well. Or
Mm.
how do you wind up managing that process today in PictureDesk?
It's entirely up to the business once they decide that an embargo or a certain amount of time has gone by. There's a little metadata tag. We flip from one thing to the next, and that makes it what we call a green box. So internally, if you look at it from within our media, it will have a green box around it, and that means all rights. It can be sold, it can be reused, it can be made available to the public. And
Yeah.
from the outside looking in, you don't see the green box, you just see what is available to be sold. So we don't trip up, we don't end up accidentally putting something on there that our content creators here within the company would rather have embargoed for a certain period of time.
Right. And so, again, that kind of gets to the user experience internally from what content do I have? I don't have to read through, is this public? Can it be? It's a visual. I don't have to click. I don't have to read. I know instantaneously when I'm looking at content, this is available for sale.
And
That's
that was
wonderful.
a very early user story. I need to know the rights to an image by just looking at it. I don't need a complicated list
Yeah.
to read.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. I'm all about fewer clicks.
We all
Too
are.
many clicks. Yeah, that's it. Too many clicks. Well, this is great, Debbie. I don't know if you had anything, or if we should move into maybe asking Angus to show us this amazing platform.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I just had one visual that I wanted to throw up onto the screen. And just to kind of, I think it really captures and summarizes a lot of what Angus has already pointed to as far as some of the requirements to keep in mind. So I guess if I were to summarize what I heard, one was the organization of the content is critical. So being able to organize it, meaning being able to not just have it as print publications, but have it digitized, have it organized in a central location, have it maybe have or create a logical structure for it. From Angus's perspective, it sounds like it was the folders. There's also probably a need to organize it in terms of which publication is it from, or which year, or which issue, or which page, or which topic, or, so kind of thinking through that logical structure. But it's not just the logical structure, it's also being able to search across it. So I would say whether it's looking to a system like ours or a system outside of ours, it's probably thinking through how easily can you search across all of that content and find what you want to find. So Angus mentioned recipes. If I have a holiday coming up and I want a particular recipe, can I easily find it across years and years of great content? Now, the other thing is, so there's the organization of the content, and there's, as you said, and you're going to show us, there's exposing that content through maybe self-service syndication capabilities or sales, as well as internally arming teams. But finally, I would imagine there's the need for, again, going back to organizing the content, but it's not just the final content, it's also the source files, I imagine. So the source images or the source graphical formats like InDesign files or, whatever creative platform is being used. So there's making sure that when you're selling that content, you can't really do any, if you need to make changes, you need the source files in order to make those changes. So I think that's kind of what I heard from you. Any further comments on that, Angus? Or
yeah, an asset is often thought of as a picture, but of course it can be an entire InDesign package. It can be a PDF. It can be a JPEG. It can be many forms, and Picturedesk caters for all of them. So even if you're thinking outside the box and you're thinking of storing video, maybe podcasts.
Oh, interesting.
It's something we're planning for the future. I've yet to meet with our video people to see if they're interested in using Picturedesk and a dedicated channel for everything of theirs, but they certainly have made noises our way to say that they are interested in something.
That's a great idea. That's fantastic. Dave, I'm writing down the next webinar.
I'm sure you are. Because there's some fantastic nuggets in here, and clearly, podcasts and books on tape, those types of things, they're definitely on the rise these days, and to be able to take that kind of content, reuse it, and deliver value in a different way, definitely multi-channel, multimedia type and format kind of a strategy. I thought number 4 was interesting, and I wasn't big into magazine publishing in my career. I was more on other areas of technology, and I've learned about other businesses. But the ability of getting and saving the final layouts of the entire magazine, and then being able to understand which assets were used on what page at what time in what publication and which issue, and make that all searchable. So I have a historical archive that I can go back and say, I know I used this lasagna recipe. It's Angus's favorite lasagna. And it was, but when was the last time we published that? Because that was great. And was it in this magazine or was it in another? To be able to very quickly get your finger and pinpoint that in your archive of all magazines, all pages, all assets ever published, has got to be incredibly powerful for the business.
Definitely, 100%, and we know they love it. So.
Yeah, and they can grab the InDesign file and bring some of that right back and say, now I'm going to grab it, change it, modify it, and it goes right to the content creators. Yeah, that's
so the finalized print PDF is ingested into Picturedesk, It had a name change halfway through our implementation. You have to forgive me there, into Picture Desk, and it's broken up. And I'll show you that. But why don't I present here and show you the front end so you can see what it looks like from the World Wide Web point of view. Share screen, Chrome tab, perfect. There it is, Content Shop by R Media. So if I am looking for, oh, look at that. We've got some previous searches here. Kim Kardashian. Let's go with lasagna. Less controversial. We have just one of our images here at the background. That could be anything. This is just something we've chosen, and we have the ability to swap it out. There has been the talk of maybe putting some instruction here on exactly how to use the site, but we figured it's so easy, anybody could. So look at this, 3 pages, each page worth 100 images of lasagna. That's pretty good. Now, if I were to do this same search inside of my login over here, you'd find that would be 8, 9, 10 pages. So what you're looking at, therefore, are the images that are available for sale. So I may decide that I want that one and that one. And oh, that looks good too. Hope this is not making anybody hungry. I could go over a number of pages, but instead I'll just go to my credit card icon and I'll drag this open so you can see it more.
Yeah.
And we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I may want this one to be commercial and editorial, this one to be digital image only, commercial editorial, and commercial editorial. So you can see the costing. You have to convert back to US dollars, I'm afraid. This is all in AUD. And for a total of 1,400, I put in the credit card, the details, click, make the payment, and in the top right-hand side of my screen, the images download. Because there's 4 of them, they'll download as a zip. If it was 1, it would just download by itself. And it's that simple. So why don't I go out?
I was going to say, that's fantastic. If you just clicked on one image, does it show the entire image, or does it stay as a thumbnail? Does it give you?
Oh, right. Yes, of course.
Detail? Oh, it does. Yeah.
You can go into a much greater detail. I'm accustomed to dealing with thumbnails. I've got mine set up to do that, but I like processing a lot of data in a short period of time. That's what I do.
High density screens, as they used to call it in call centers. Yeah. Okay.
Look over here. We've got the IDS keywords that have been put in by AI.
Yeah.
The original photographer, the source commission. That's an internal number, C1514822. So in the previous example that I told you, the landscape gardening company that wanted to see their images, we said, I'll just put in this number and you'll find all of the images from that shoot. And they were able to pick the ones that they wanted and buy them. Simple. Just the way we like it.
Can you search across? Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask, can you search across any of that? When you went into an image, it looked like there was some description text about the image. I guess
so if
like
I
keywords,
went Australian Women's Weekly simple good food, could I search on that? Yes, I can. Let's go out. And see what that comes back with. And I must forgive our internet here on level 3. It has been playing up. It's normally a lot quicker than this. You have to believe me. There we go. Whoa. Okay. We've got 5 pages of 100 image search results.
Interesting.
And people can try that search for themselves. They could go to your website and they could just plug that in and see the performance as well as the results. Yeah.
Contentshop.com.au, right up there. So let me log in and show you the difference between Joe Public's view and so an agent logging in, even though we'll use my login because it's the only one I've got. You can see the channels here at the top: health, beauty, homes, books, food. So if you're an agent that deals with just food or just homes, that's what you would be seeing. Let's
Right.
try homes because they're always fun to look at. Now remember, I'm internal here. What I'm seeing is a little set of scales, meaning there are complex rights issues with this. What I'm not
Mhm.
seeing are any green boxes at this stage. I might have to scroll through a few pages before I do. And then I'll come across some with green boxes around them, meaning they will be the ones that would appear on the public-facing site.
Yeah,
Food's
fantastic.
probably, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say you did hit on something there that clearly is key to all publishers and anybody who is selling content is complex rights and the ability of understanding the rights and how you can or can't use that. Clearly, that's captured here as well, so that
Yes.
people can make the proper decision and choice as to how the content is being used, so it aligns with any of the requirements and the usage rights that you have for that content.
And here is a perfect example, complicated rights for this berry Caflutus and all rights for this one here. In fact, all this entire row, all rights and there and up to there, but moving further up the page, it looks like we've got some more complex rights issues to deal with.
Mhm.
So that is how our agents would see it. They would only see the stuff that we will still allow them to see, but more interestingly is the pages view. So if you're dealing not just with pictures, you want to deal with an article, you can look at, let's look at one of our homemakers titled Bell magazine is our premier homes magazine. It goes head to head here in Australia with, what's that Condé Nast one, Vogue Living. So I could decide I want something specifically from Bell in 2023. It was issue 5. I could even go down to the pages, but instead, if I just hit go, that will then return the search for me, everything the 2023 issue from issue number 5, all 181 PDFs. Isn't
Fantastic.
that amazing? In the
Yeah.
old system that did this for us, the pages, our poor syndication team had to take the print ready PDF and create a JPEG from each page. What torture would that have been? I
Yeah.
felt so
Yeah.
sorry for them. Whereas nowadays, the print ready PDF is just ingested into an FTP folder and broken up for us and put here. Simple.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Huge savings and clearly allows people to do a lot more value add with their time versus
Hmm.
doing JPEGs of PDFs and loading. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah. So I know that they were happy with the new system because how could you not be once you've taken away quite an onerous task from you? Actually, here's the other thing I probably have to show you because it's just so much fun. The archive. So of the 13.5 million assets that we have, 12.2 million of them are from our archive. If I just click into these look all like graphics to me, I'd rather do something interesting, but let's just look at this guy. Oh, it's a Getty image. So we would never be able to sell it. Getty images,
Right.
AI, so it's Photoshop. You can see this was the original folder structure, archive, MWS Museum, 2017 jumbo issue to be solved. So I could click on, say, that far down into the hierarchy, and it would return everything, including Word documents, puzzles, Photoshop, everything. Look at that, 3,590 assets or images from the archive from back in the day.
Nice.
That's
So
I know, it's
now,
amazing. I love it.
so now that that's kind of exposed to the surface or more easily findable, searchable, do you think it's going to increase the repurposing of the archive or the selling out of
Yes,
things that maybe you weren't selling before?
for sure. It would be up to the syndication team or a head of syndication to figure out what can go from the archive into further syndication, but definitely from within. We have, one of our longer term magazines, That's Life. They love looking back at their older stuff and repurposing something from, 10, 15 years ago. If you can, why wouldn't you?
Right. And I see some examples of InDesign files there too. So that's an example where you're storing those assets within the system. Nice.
So I'll stop
Fantastic.
sharing and come back to the group. Here we go.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know we're kind of getting near the end. We're about 55 minutes or so in. Debbie, I know that there's some things going on with Picture Desk and some offerings that we have, and maybe you could give everybody an update on what we have available, and then we could dive into some questions and answers for the folks who are with us.
Absolutely. So Angus, first of all, thank you so much for letting everybody take a little bit of a sneak peek into your company's use of the system, Picture Desk.
Welcome.
It was hopefully you helped to intrigue some folks out there, some of your peers, into diving in a little bit further. So I was able to get permission for a discount offer for anybody that registers or attends this webinar, this live broadcast. So I was able to get a 20% discount on the Picture Desk platform. And we're running this through the spring. So if you're interested, email solutions@fidel.com. That's solutions@fidel.com. We might try to pop that up on the screen. And that would provide the power of enable organizations to leverage Picture Desk to do three things, essentially. One is to aggregate all of their content together that might be stored in disparate different locations, whether those are in different DAM systems or FTP servers, or even out there through websites of their partner suppliers. So, one big great advantage of Picture Desk is that aggregation capability, bringing it all together in a single platform, being able to search across it. The second capability that this special discount offer would extend to would be the content portal syndication capability, which is what Angus had shown us when we saw those various pages from the different issues. And then finally, the e-commerce capability as well, being able to expose it with an e-commerce front end. So that's the offer we have today. I guess I'll turn it back over to Dave to see if there are any audience questions that have come in that we want to ask.
Yeah, thanks. I think we do have one that is popped up, and thank you. It's from Emily. Do you have targets, right, for how much content you'd like to repurpose by publication overall?
It's an overall target, and that would be part of the KPIs for our head of syndication. So he'd be better aligned to tell you the answer to that one. I know that he has. It's an ever increasing graph for him.
It's an upward slope.
It's an upward trend. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Let's see if we have anything else that's coming in at this time as we get near the end. I know that I would have one other question if I was sitting on here that I didn't ask earlier, which was from the time that you engaged with the Picture Desk team to the time that you went live, what was that time frame?
Oh, it was a good 6 months because we were finessing. We had head of business process and head of syndication involved by this stage, and seeing the product nearly ready gave them ideas of, well, actually you'd like this tweaked and this tweaked and this tweaked. So that probably delayed it a little bit longer than it should have, but at least it ensured that when we did go live, it was much closer to the vision that they both had for the system that the head of business process had to represent as the new business process, and the head of syndication had to use as his primary tool of trade.
Gotcha. But 6 months for a full system replacement is absolutely a rapid time frame and the fact that it was potentially available earlier, but then got tweaked as you saw it, is natural for that to happen. And so it's still
yes.
a very compressed cycle. That's wonderful.
Do I have
I have a
advice on
question here.
business process optimization and change management? It happened by default within our company. So we have monthly magazines and weekly magazines. The weekly magazines just work off share drives, and then they push their print-ready PDF through the enterprise software, which is called Woodwing, and get it out to print. The monthlies, however, worked within the enterprise software for the entire life cycle. The digital asset management system connected to it was where they stored everything. So when PictureDesk was implemented, we thought of connecting it to the enterprise software, but it became just too difficult. So I thought, well, let's just not do it and have the monthlies and weeklies work in exactly the same way by just having their work in progress file share folders on the network drives. And then, because at the end of it, we in IT or we in the business, depending on your point of view, get the finalized print ready PDF ingested into PictureDesk anyway. So by default, all of a sudden, a new process was implemented for the monthly magazines that absolutely mirrored the weekly magazines. So now there's just one process for doing the print magazines.
That's fantastic. Alignment and optimization.
Aggregating content. The difference was all of the syndicated content was in one system, or the content that could be syndicated, and everything else was in the other. So the other became the archive that you saw, 12.2 million assets, and spread throughout the channels that you saw at the top of PictureDesk was the syndicated content. Now, since we've gone live on April 1st last year, we've been adding a lot of content. So the lines have become a little bit blurred. This is why we have the boxes around the stuff that's all rights, because from a business point of view, if you're in the system with your RMedia login, you're going to be seeing everything. So that was it a problem? It wasn't really a problem to be solved. It was just the way it worked out for us. One system became the archive, the other system became everything else.
Fantastic. I think, Debbie, we're at time, or just a little bit over.
Shows we've been having fun.
Yeah, no, and it's been very insightful. It's been educating for me. I appreciate your time, Angus.
You're very welcome.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you so much, Angus, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great.
Bye.